Hey guys, this is Devon Harris and welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I'm your host, of course, and you know what we do here. We share ideas and insights that are going to challenge you and inspire you and encourage you to keep on pushing and live your absolute best life. So look, is that something you're interested in, even remotely? Then if you are, you're in the right place, man. So again, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. You know, there are some people who enjoy their 15 minutes of fame, and then there are others who are so remarkable that they go down in the annals of history. My guest today is one such person, man. He's a hockey player, played at Boston University from 1973 to 1977. You know, I was still in elementary school, but who's counting? And during that time, he did a stint on Team USA, played in the Ice Hockey World Championships, 1975, 76. And then he played for the Toledo Gold Diggers, where he won Rookie of the Year honors and helped lead his team to a championship. And then he was selected to a named captain of the 1980 Miracle on Ice USA hockey team. You may have heard of them. Their extraordinary feat of toppling the Russians was depicted in the movie Miracle by Disney. In fact, our guest scored the winning goal, and that is considered one of the iconic sports moments. Back in 2008, ESPN viewers named it the greatest sports highlight of all time. He also worked as a color commentator for the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers on Fox. Was a color commentator for the NHL on the USA Network, called 5 Olympic Games for ABC and CBS. And today he is Director of Special Outreach at Boston University and one of the top Olympic motivational keynote speakers out there. If you're a hockey fan, you know I'm talking about Mike Rizzo Eruzione. Mike, it's awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Devin, thank you. Thanks for having me on. This is a first for me. So it's the second time I've been on a podcast, so this will be fun.
Hey, it's always good, man. You know, so it's wonderful, actually, to be speaking to a legend like yourself. And I have to say, it's not every day I get to speak to a guy who has had a movie made about an important part of his life. So, you know, I guess it's my time to ask you some questions that people always ask me. So let's kick it off. You know, the movie Miracle, how accurate was that, Mike? And
it was pretty close. I tell people it's really the Herb Brooks story, and we're a part of it. I think the HBO documentary was spectacular. That talked more to us, to the team. But I thought Hollywood did a good job. Kurt Russell was eerie. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant as Herb Brooks. Although in the movie, Kurt played a softer, friendlier Herb. Herb was a little more intense, so they softened him up in the movie. But I thought what the movie got was what the moment meant. It captured the spirit of a country, captured the spirit of our team, and the closeness of our team, and it captured, I think, what that moment was for a lot of people.
Yeah, how involved were you in the making of the film?
I wasn't involved at all. I had nothing to do with it, and I didn't want to be involved because I thought if I was involved and my role in the movie was different, then the guys would have went, "Oh, no wonder why you did this and did that." I stayed away, and I think basically the whole team stayed away. I don't believe they talked to any of us other than Herb telling what he felt the story was.
Gotcha. So in the end, did you like it? Did the team?
No, I liked it. I liked it. We won, so that, they didn't change it.
It didn't change the result.
I thought it was done well, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. So what is it like though, having a movie made about an important part of your life?
It's kind of scary in some ways because you don't know what they're going to do or say.
Mm-hmm.
I look at my role in the movie. I thought, if anything, it was maybe they had me a little more deer in the headlights sometimes. I don't know if they showed my enthusiasm as much as I normally have.
Right.
But, that's Hollywood's way of portraying you whatever way they feel they want to portray you.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I remember the kid who was playing me. He's a local kid from Massachusetts, and he came to a couple of our high school practices. because he wanted to get to know me a little. And I remember one day at practice, my two sons were on the high school team at the time. And I introduced Patrick, the kid who was going to play me in the movie. I said, Michael, Paul, those are my two boys. Right. I said, I want you to meet your father.
And they were, huh?
Yeah, they kind of looked at me like, yeah, that's very funny, Dad. But, again, it's a little scary because somebody's playing your life. And it's sometimes when I meet young kids today and their parents will say, hey, that's the kid Rizzo from the movie Miracle. And they'll go, that's not him.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Go, no, that's the real person.
Yeah.
So it is a little bizarre when you see somebody playing you.
Yes, I agree. I can attest to that.
Yes, right.
How about you and your friends, your teammates? How often do you guys get together?
Once in a while. We do have a fantasy camp every year. 5 years. This was our 5th year of a fantasy camp. And we get about 14 guys out of the 19 that are around. Bobby Suter's the only member that's passed away, other than obviously Herb Brooks passed away, but Bobby's the only player. And we get about 14 guys once a year to come back to Lake Placid for a fantasy camp. We have done some of those memorabilia shows, those signings. And we have an odd golf trip where some guys might get together. It's, the Minnesota guys, where I think 12 of them are living, they see each other quite a bit.
Right.
I'm in Boston, Jimmy's in Florida, Callahan's in Chicago, Janison's in New York, Kenny Morrow's in Kansas City. So we're spread out a little, but when we
Boston guys are spread out a bit.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. So let's go back, Mike, to the beginning. So you're born in Winthrop, Massachusetts. What was life like in the household?
Well, it was a great household. As a matter of fact, I lived next door to the house I grew up in, and my mother-in-law actually lives around the corner, so I've never left the neighborhood.
Right.
I lived in a 3-family house, and we lived on the 2nd floor, and I have 4 sisters and a brother. Mm-hmm. And now you're going to follow me here because my mother's brother lived upstairs, and he married my father's sister. So
all in the family, huh?
All in the family. And there were 5 kids upstairs.
Yeah. And
then my father's other sister lived on the 1st floor, and there were 4 kids in that family. So I grew up in a house with about 15 kids, and it was just a loving, caring, competitive atmosphere. It was just a great place. And I thought everybody lived in a 3-family. I didn't know people had their own homes.
Right.
And, it was just a great way to live. My cousins that I grew up with, they all got married, and now they have kids who are the same age as my kids, and we all still live basically in the same town. So it's an extended family that I grew up with, and still have that extended family today.
Oh, so that is awesome and a blessing. So where did you fall in rank with your siblings?
I have 3 sisters, then myself, then another sister, then a brother.
All right, cool. And I know you played other sports. You played football and baseball growing up.
Yeah, well, football as we call it, soccer as you guys call it. But
I played real football.
I played real football. I didn't play soccer. We didn't have soccer when I was a kid. But that was my passion. I played 3 sports in high school. I love football. I probably played more baseball in my life than I played any sport. But hockey was something you did around here in the wintertime. And my hometown's a small town, so they really needed and rely on 3-sport athletes. So, all my friends played 3 sports. Some played basketball, but we didn't have soccer. We didn't have, lacrosse in those years. So you basically played football, ran track, golf, baseball, hockey. That was about it.
I got you. So when I was saying you played real football, I thought you were referring to soccer. No, you played the ball under the arm kind of game.
Yes, tackle football.
I forgive you, man.
That's okay.
So you're saying that you played baseball more than any other sport, but you ended up as a hockey player.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'll tell you the whole story. After high school, I was about 155 pounds when I graduated high school, and I didn't have the greatest of grades, and I wasn't the smartest student. I shouldn't say I wasn't the smartest student. I didn't apply myself as much as I should have. And I decided to go to prep school for a year. So I went to a school in Maine called Berwick Academy as a postgraduate. And I wanted to go to the University of New Hampshire. That's where my goal was. I wanted to play football, hockey, and baseball. And the football coach and the baseball coach really liked me, but the hockey coach wasn't quite sold on me as a Division I hockey player. And the mistake I made was I put all my eggs in one basket. I thought, I'm going to UNH. And when they didn't take me, I had nowhere to go. So I ended up going to a school called Merrimack College. Now, Merrimack at the time was a Division II school. It was a Division II hockey school. And he was the only hockey coach that really kind of watched me play. So I decided that I guess I'd go to Merrimack and play hockey and probably baseball because they didn't have football then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the summertime, I didn't play hockey in the summer. I played baseball all summer. And I got a call from a friend of mine. It was about July, and there was a summer league game, and they needed some players to play because a bunch of the guys went to Cape Cod for the weekend, and they needed some hockey guys to play in the game. So they asked me if I'd play, and I said, yeah, you need a guy, I'll play. So I played in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, the guy refereeing the game was a guy named Jack Parker. Now, Jack Parker at the time was the assistant coach at Boston University. And when the game was over, Jack Parker pulled me aside and he asked me where I was going to school. I said I was going to Merrimack. He goes, well, I remember you from high school. Where'd you go last year? So I told him I went to school in Maine. And he said, well, we have a kid from Canada that decided not to come. We have one scholarship left. Would you like to come to Boston University? And I went, yeah. I mean, BU at the time was coming off back-to-back national championships, one of the best teams in the country. So I remember going home and telling my dad that Mr. Parker offered me a scholarship to BU. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to take it, Dad. I know I can play there. Mm-hmm. So I went the next day, signed my letter, and ended up at Boston University.
Wow.
Well, it gets even more interesting because the head coach had never seen me play before. And at the beginning of the season, I was like playing on the fourth line, and we'd only played a couple of games. And I was playing, but not playing a lot. Mm-hmm. And the head coach got fired right around Christmas time because of some recruiting violations. So Jack Parker became the head coach, and I went from centering the fourth line to playing second wing on the second line, left wing on the second line, and ended up leading the team in goal scoring my freshman year. So you talk about opportunities. If I never played in the summer league game, I never would have gone to BU, and if I'd never gone to BU, I probably wouldn't have made the Olympic team. So
yes,
strange how things work out.
Yes, that's very true. So I read or saw a video where you started out skating in your sister's figure skating.
Yeah, I grew up with a very loving, caring family. Like I told you, my dad worked 3 jobs. My mother took care of 6 kids, and we didn't have a lot of money in the house. And they used to freeze the tennis courts down the street from where I lived. And I used to get my sister's white figure skates. I was like the first, second grade. And in those years, you could go down to the tennis courts too by yourself. You didn't have to have a police escort. Mm-hmm. I'd go, Mom, I'm going down to skate, and I'll be home in 5 or 6 hours. But I would go down there and learn to skate. And eventually, my sister would come down. I'd give her the skates, and I would go home. In those years, you could save S&H green stamps. And my mom saved up enough stamps, and I came home one day, and there was a pair of hide ice skates on the table. So that's how I started playing the sport of ice hockey.
Oh, wow. And so here you are. So you're at Boston University. You're leading the team in scoring. You go off and you play in Toledo. Tell me about that experience.
Well, I went to camp with the New York Rangers. The Rangers had my rights. And I went through the training camp with the Rangers, and they called me in and said, look, they have a lot of players under contract. They're not going to sign any new players, but they liked the way I played. So they said, if you go to Toledo, Ohio, you can play in Toledo, which was called the International League. Mm-hmm. And I played as an amateur. I didn't have a pro contract. My contract with Toledo was every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I would get a paycheck and cover my expenses in my apartment. And I think I made $3,500 my first year. And I went to Toledo and had a real good year and led the team in Rookie of the Year and finished second on the team in scoring. And again, opportunity, how life is funny. I was going to sign with the New York Rangers and turn pro. If I'd done that, I wouldn't have been able to play on the Olympic team. Mm-hmm. But the general manager of the New York Rangers, John Ferguson, got fired. And a new general manager came in and told my agent that we weren't signing any new players and that Mike was free to do what he wanted to do. So then I thought about maybe going back to Toledo, play as an amateur, and with the opportunity of trying out for the Olympic team. So I went back to Toledo. They gave me a few more dollars to help pay some more of my expenses because you can't live on $3,500. Yeah. And I ended up, still signing an amateur contract with them, finished the year with them, and then got invited to try out for the Olympic team. So 2 years in Toledo, and then the opportunity to try out for the Olympic team.
All right. So tell us about that team selection for the 80 games.
Well, there were 68 players that got invited to Colorado Springs. And in the movie, they have the team picked in one day. Trust me, it was 2 weeks. So 2 weeks we competed against each other. And Herb Brooks sat in the stands and evaluated the players and selected 26 of us. So 26 players made up the 80 Olympic team, but only 20 were going to Lake Placid. Throughout the course of the 6 months of training, 6 guys were going to get cut from the team.
So you guys started out as 68, you said, and you're competing and training together and living together, I assume, for what, 2 weeks?
2 weeks in Colorado Springs at the Olympic. They used to have the Olympic Festival.
Yeah, with the knowledge in the back of your head that, hey, you know, the vast majority of us, almost 2/3 of us, aren't going to be around. Wow.
Well, that's part of the process. That's why you try out. You know, that's you know, that's the way it worked. And actually, when you think about it, there were probably hundreds of people that tried out, and they narrowed it down to 68, and then 68 went to 26, and 26 were going to go to 20. But again, you knew what the process was. You knew going in that this was the deal.
So it seemed then that there was a bulk of the final team, mostly between Boston and Minnesota.
Well, I think there were 12 guys from Minnesota, 4 guys from Boston, 2 from Michigan, 2 from Wisconsin.
So Minnesota had the lion's share.
Yes, and that's where the coach was from. And, you know, they had just come off a national championship, so they you know, they had some pretty good players.
Mm-hmm. So in the movie, A Miracle, it portrayed, you know, some tension between the Boston guys and the Minnesota guys. And I know how movies are. They have to create drama. They have to create conflict. Right. But did any of that exist?
Oh, yeah. And I'll explain it this way. My junior year in college, we played the University of Minnesota in the first round of the Frozen Four of college hockey. And 3 minutes into the game, we had a bench-clearing brawl with the University of Minnesota.
So you guys weren't fans of each other, is that
No,
right?
not at all. And then 2 years later at the Olympic Festival, in the warm-up, Team Massachusetts and Team Minnesota got in another bench-clearing brawl. So there was a lot of animosity between East and West and Minnesota and Boston. But as soon as the team was picked, that never existed. We never had an issue. And even almost 40 years later, we still kind of joke about it.
Yeah. So talk to me then, Mike, about some of the lessons that you learned from that experience about teamwork.
Well, you know, one thing about the sport of ice hockey is you learn at a young age how important your teammates are. Hockey is one of the most unselfish sports you'll play. You really rely on everybody. So you learn at a young age how important your teammates are, and to respect your teammates and to work together. And us in 1980, we knew we had some really talented players, but as we used to say, individually you can be good, but collectively we can win a championship.
Yeah. And
I think as a team, we bought into it right away. We trusted each other. We respected each other. We learned how important it was to continue to believe in, I like to say, old-fashioned values, you know, hard work, determination, pride, respect, commitment. You know, qualities that our hockey team had that made us a better team. And we bought into it from the beginning. And I think that was a huge part of our success, was the love and the respect that we had for each other day in and day out.
So you're talking about an environment where each player came there, obviously talented, gifted, but came and worked. And each of you saw the other guy working. So that, I guess, caused you to respect them and then started to trust them?
To use the word you used, we pushed each other. We pushed each other, you know, for 6 months every day in practice to be the best. And nobody took a back seat. Nobody thought they were better or bigger than anybody else. Everybody understand what their role was on the team, what their responsibility was on the team. You know, I've always said Mark Johnson was our best hockey player. But how good would Mark have been if the other guys weren't doing their job as well? You know, Herb used to call us a lunch pail, hard hat group of guys. And that's what we were. For 6 months, we came to practice every day, prepared and focused to be the best. And it proved out at the end.
So you came to work. You know, yeah, you're right. I speak all the time about the fact that human beings, we push and inspire each other when we work interdependently. And it seemed that was the energy and the atmosphere that existed amongst you guys. Talk about Herb for a minute. What kind of leader was he? And how did his leadership influence you as captain?
Well, he was demanding. But then again, you know, I tell people that's how coaches coached in the 70s. I tell people Herb was like your dad. You know, you love your dad, but sometimes you hate your dad because he makes you do things you don't want to do. And that was Herb. He pushed us. He pushed us hard. But we respected him. And, you know, and that was important. Herb didn't care if you liked him. And trust me, there are a lot of times we didn't like him. but there was never a time where we did not respect him.
Yeah.
And the other thing was we had great trust. I mean, we trusted Herb and what he was doing, and we bought into it. And, you know, you can scream and yell at me for 2 hours. That's fine. I can deal with it for 2 hours. Then practice is over, and I go on my merry way and go back to practice and scream and yell again if you want. But he always used to tell us there's a method to my madness. And when the Olympics were over and we won, there was obviously a method to his madness. And he was a brilliant coach. He was a great motivator. And somebody I truly admired and respected. And it made it, you know, hard to go to practice every day, but we knew we were getting pushed to accomplish something that we were dreaming we could accomplish.
Gotcha. So how did you get selected as team captain?
Well, it was a player vote, but I'm still not convinced everybody voted for me because there were so many Minnesota kids. They probably would have voted for the kid from Minnesota. So I don't know what happened. I know what it was. We voted. The next day in practice, after practice, we were in a circle, and Herb looked at us and said, guys, we're on the ice tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mike, you're the captain. See you tomorrow. And that's how it went down.
Right.
Now, I've said this many times, Devon. I was a captain amongst captains. There were 15 guys on my team that were either captains of their colleges or captains of their high school teams. Mm-hmm. So we had a team of leaders. The important thing for me to be as captain was to be myself and not change. Sometimes people they climb the ladder and they become more successful. They become a different person. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's the worst thing you can do. The reason my teammates or Herb elected me captain was because of the person that I was. And I think they knew that because I was the captain, it wasn't going to change me. And it hasn't changed me in 40 years. I'm still the same guy I was in high school.
Indeed.
I was honored to be the captain, but it wasn't that big a deal.
So character is an important trait in leadership.
Oh, absolutely. Because, again, if you don't have great character, your teammates aren't going to respect you. And if they don't respect you, then you have no authority and you have not so much authority, but you have no command of the locker room or respect of your teammates. If you say something, they can just brush it off and say, well, what is he talking about? We don't care. But I think when you show great character and that's part of being a great leader. And
that's true, by the way, whether we're talking about a locker room or a conference room, a hockey team or a sales team or, you know, any group of people, any team that we have to lead. So, you know, 1980, you're heading into the Olympic Games. You guys are basically amateurs, college kids, the youngest, 21 years old, the youngest team ever fielded by the U.S. And you are going up against like the juggernaut, the Russians, who have been, some of them playing for 8, 12 years together, extensive international playing time. So it seemed as if you guys were outmatched, certainly in terms of experience. Were there any other teams that were even remotely close to the Russians in terms of experience?
Oh, every team other than us. I mean, every team was professional players. We were the youngest team in the tournament. The average age, as you mentioned, was 21 and a half. Mm-hmm. It was the youngest Olympic team we had ever put on the ice before. And other than Canada, the only two teams that were amateur, the only team that was an amateur was us in Canada. Mm-hmm. And all the other countries, you know, sent their best players, their professional players. Although there were no Europeans really playing in the NHL then, and there were very few Americans that were playing in the NHL. So the European players were their pros, and we were our best amateurs. And, you know, that's just the way that was. We never thought about it. We never talked about it. It wasn't we're going against a bunch of pros. That discussion never even came up in the locker room one time.
So, so no matter how you slice it, you're playing behind the 8 ball. How did Herb, I guess, sell you guys on the vision that you could win?
Well, I think it's an old-fashioned statement that if you think you're going to lose, you probably will. Mm-hmm. So our mindset going in the Olympic Games was we thought we had a chance to win a medal. We thought we could get to the medal round. That was our goal. We never once talked about the Soviets. It's funny, to this day, people think we only played one game, you know?
Yeah, I know.
The Soviets weren't even a discussion. We had to worry about three countries that were supposed to beat us in our division were Sweden, Czechoslovakia, and West Germany. Mm-hmm. You know, we thought Romania and Norway, we should be able to handle those two countries. So it really was, you know, one game at a time. It was like, let's play Sweden. Let's see how it goes. And, you know, the confidence Herb had in us, the confidence we had in each other. So let's go play the games and see what's going to happen. There wasn't a lot of rah-rah. There wasn't a lot of big speeches. It was just go out and play. and see what happens. And, we kept playing and winning, so he didn't want to change anything. He didn't want to alter anything. We didn't take any different approaches from game to game. We just kept playing the way that we felt we were capable of playing in order to win, and continue to play that style that we would practice for 6 months, and we did, and each game it became successful.
Got you. So in the history of the Olympics, the U.S. had only won one gold medal in hockey, and that was back in 1960 in Squaw Valley. And so here you are now, the least experienced team. There's nothing that would suggest that the results were going to be any different. What did Herb do to ensure that there's going to be a different result this time around?
I think he just kept preaching to us to believe, to keep working, to keep playing. And like I said, there was no long range plan other than game to game to game to game. And as we were winning, our confidence in the locker room was growing. Herb's confidence in us was growing. His comments to us continued to press us and push us to, we can do this. We can keep winning. Let's keep playing. Let's keep doing what we're doing. And, don't take a step back. And we never did. We just kept advancing and playing. And there wasn't much for him to say because, you can tell by the atmosphere in the locker room, the confidence in practices, the way we were behaving, that our mindset was, let's keep going. We got a chance here.
Talk me through the 6 months, because if my research is correct, in the past, when the USA selected a team, a bunch of college players, and you train for maybe 2 weeks and you go to the Olympics, right? But you guys started 6 months and you're playing, obviously, here in the US on a smaller ice rink. So what are some of the strategies? What was a process that took you from that 2-week trial to Lake Placid in 1980?
Well, the first thing, like you said, is we were going to train for 6 months instead of a few weeks. The second thing we were going to do is change the way we play the game. The Olympic sheet of ice, it's bigger, it's wider, it's longer. It's a totally different game. And, in the past, by the time you get used to the sheet of ice, by the time you get used to your teammates, the Olympics were basically over. But Herb felt we were going to change the way we would play. We were going to take a blend of the European game, which is a lot different, a lot of crisscrossing, a lot of using the ice and the size of the rink to your advantage, and change the way we play. And, people said you can't teach in 6 months what the Europeans have done their whole life. And typical Herb, he said, I can and we will.
Right.
And we learned a new style of, basically of hockey, and it was fun. Change is fun sometimes. And, if you haven't been successful in the past, don't be afraid to change and do something different. And it was fun for us, and we learned a new style of hockey. It was amazing how quickly we picked up what Herb wanted us to do. And we were a better team by playing that way. And we kind of threw it right back at the Europeans. So when we got on the ice in Lake Placid, it wasn't something that we were surprised for. We were ready. We prepared for it.
So the lesson here is that you should never be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. That, as you say, change can be fun, right?
Herb said to us, you can't be common. The common man goes no place. We are going to be uncommon. He said that many, many times.
Yes. And that obviously worked in your favor. So during that 6 months, I know you guys ended up going to Europe because that's where the ice rinks were, the bigger ones. And you were having good success playing against, I guess, club teams in Europe, weren't you?
Yes. We didn't play many of the big teams. The Soviets were actually in the United States playing against the NHL teams. And eventually we did play back in the States when we did play the Soviet B team, not the A team. We played the B team 7 games or 6 games. But in Europe, we were just trying to play as many club teams or as many games as we could play.
And then you ended up playing, was it Norway, a team that you're supposed to beat, and you drew the game?
Yeah, the game ended in a tie, and Herb wasn't very happy with the way we played. And you saw the scene in the movie Miracle. The scene in the movie was a little different. And in the movie, they had all 20 of us skating, but that night, only 16 of us dressed. So 16 of us skated, and one guy got thrown out for fighting. So there were only 15 of us that skated. And we did the Herbies for about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. We did them in waves of 5, not everyone at once. And then we did them for like 15 minutes, and then we stretched. And then he blew the whistle, and we went back, and we did them again, and then we stretched, and then we did them. Then they shut the lights off in the building, and we continued to do them. And then finally we were done, and we went in. And he said to us, we had to play Norway again the next day. And he said, if you play this way again tomorrow, you're going to skate again.
Right.
Well, we won 8-0 the next day.
Because you were not about to skate again. No more herpes for you.
We learned.
No, but and in the movie, he said something that I thought was important, telling. It was that you were not talented enough to win just on talent. And I think a lot of people, regardless of their field, rely too much on talent, and talent will fail you if you don't become skilled.
I agree. And, obviously we had talent, but what good is talent if you don't have the work ethic and the commitment and things that I talked about earlier, pride and respect, those all go hand in hand. And, when you have intangibles, that makes that talent that much better. And we had intangibles, so our talent became better.
Do you think the Herbies and just the way Herb just pushed you guys to the point where I'm assuming every guy on the team hated him, made the team closer, wanted
Absolutely.
to play harder?
Absolutely. I mean, that was part of the method to his madness. It was us against him.
Mm-hmm.
He made it clear that he didn't, like I said to you earlier, he didn't care if we liked him. It was important that we respected him. Right. And by us being mad or pissed off at him, it drew us as a team closer together, because it would be like, we'll show you, Herb. You can't push us. We'll fight you to the end. And I think that was, something that he wanted to instill in us, and it worked.
Nice. So you guys, you weren't expected to even medal. I think all the pundits said, hey, maybe they'll finish somewhere 7th to 11th in the competition. But you go to the Olympics and you win the whole thing. Daunting task. So what do you say to someone, Mike, who is striving to achieve a major goal, but I call them the experts, all the pundits tell them that it's impossible?
Well, it's always fun to prove people wrong. And the other thing, and I tell people this a lot, and if you work hard, you're not always gonna win, but you're gonna learn how important it is to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, the hard work paid off, and we won, and we accomplished something incredible. But when I walk away from it, I still realize that if we didn't work hard, it never would have happened. So we learned about the value of work. And I always believe if you understand the value of work, at some point in your life, you'll be successful. It might not be today or tomorrow or next month or next year, but when you're the best at what you do, I'll bet it's because of the time and effort and work that you put in. It wasn't a miracle. Miracle's a catchy phrase. It sounds nice. Yeah. But it was really about determination and hard work and perseverance and believing. And if we didn't win, I still would have walked away with understanding how important those values are and how important you have to work hard to be successful.
Yeah, you brought up the importance. So your feat, your accomplishment is described as a miracle on ice. But you're right, a miracle is something that is kind of a supernatural, superhuman feat. And while you could probably describe what you did as superhuman, it wasn't supernatural. It came as a result of the hard work.
Correct. I talk about miracles. We hear about it sometimes. Somebody goes into a burning building and saves somebody. Those are sometimes miracles. What doctors perform surgeries and they save lives.
Mm-hmm.
This again was a hockey game and a hockey tournament. But the lessons are what made it so special.
We're going to get into the tournament and the game in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about Lake Placid, the village, and the Olympic Games. So I've competed in 3. I've been to 2 or 3 other Olympics, and I've obviously been to Lake Placid many times. And almost every time I'm there, I wonder to myself, how did they host an Olympic Games here? Twice. The place is tiny, and I'm just in my head, kind of playing out the scenes of all the other Olympic Games I've seen with the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. What was it like?
Well, the Olympics are very different now. There's more countries, there's more sports, there's more athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Lake Placid, there wasn't anywhere near the amount of skiers that they have with the indoor track, the aerials and everything. So there's way less athletes, way less countries. It was a great little Olympics. It's, you've been to Lake Placid, like you said, it's like Pleasantville. It's like going back in time. It hasn't changed. The stores are the same. The people are the same. The venues are the same. I love going back there. And again, in 1980, it was a quaint little village that hosted a small kind of Olympic Games that had a huge impact. But, I've been to the other Olympic Games over the years, and yeah, there's no way near they could compare.
Where exactly was the Olympic Village?
Well, the Olympic Village is where the prison is now. It's a maximum security prison.
I don't know where that is.
That's in Raybrook. It's just outside Lake Placid. So there's a lot of murderers, and so the village is not a village anymore.
Right. Well, it's a village of a different kind.
For different reasons, yeah.
So what was life like in the village?
It was awesome. The thing for us is we couldn't go downtown Lake Placid because once people knew you were a hockey player, it got to be a little crazy. So we basically stayed in the village, and you've been in it. You meet other athletes, you hang around, you go to the video room, you go to the movies and watch a movie. You hang with your teammates. I enjoy a couple of beers every once in a while, so it was hard to have a beer because you couldn't go downtown. So we used to put some beer in our hockey bag and bring it into the village and sit in we lived in a little trailer, 4 guys to a trailer. Mm-hmm. And we'd sit in the trailer and spend time together as a team and just talking and being together. Very rare did you go downtown other than to maybe watch, figure skating or speed skating. Watching Eric Heiden was a trip, 5 gold medals. And you could watch him from outside the fence. So it was a very different atmosphere, but you really stayed more in the village than you did downtown.
Yeah, I can imagine. So 1980, the world was very different then. We were at the height of the Cold War, which is one of the reasons why the American win against the Soviet Union it's so impactful. So how did the athletes behind the Iron Curtain relate to those from the West and vice versa? Yeah,
you didn't spend much time with them. The Soviets were very reclusive. They pretty much stayed to themselves. Mm-hmm. And the Czechs and the Soviets didn't get along real well, so those athletes weren't bonding. You really spent time with your teammates. The only time you'd see some athletes, like I said, if you're in the arcade, the video room,
right?
You'd run into a Swedish hockey player or a skier or something, and you might chat with them or her. But it was, again, not a ton of mingling, partly for us because we played like on a Monday, then we practiced on Tuesday, then we played on Wednesday, then we practiced on Thursday, then we played on Friday. Where some of the other athletes, they had one event, they competed, and they were done. So
they're done, yeah.
They had a blast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We still had games to play and practices and curfews and things that we had to kind of keep in mind. So it wasn't the party atmosphere that I think probably some of the other athletes had because once they competed, they were done. They could just do whatever they wanted.
So for a while, I felt bad as a bobsledder because we race at the end of both weeks of the Olympic Games, so there's no partying. So now I know I feel your pain. So you're at the Olympics now, and it's go time, right? You're there to get a job done. So the first you played, was it Sweden you played first?
We played Sweden before the opening ceremonies, the day before. Right. And there weren't many people in the building because nobody was really going to hockey games, especially the Olympics hadn't started yet.
Yeah.
Per se. And Billy Baker scored what was the biggest goal, one of the biggest goals of the Olympics because he scored with 28 seconds left to go and we tie Sweden. Heck, if we lose to Sweden, maybe we don't get to the medal round. So, Billy's goal was huge and, kind of got lost in the shuffle over the years.
Yes, I can, because I've never heard of it before. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So Sweden, and then you went on. How did the rest of the competition go before you get? Well,
then we had the opening ceremonies, and then we played Czechoslovakia. The only team that anybody thought could beat the Soviets, and we blew them out. We beat them 7-3. We were behind Sweden, came back and tied. We were behind Czechoslovakia, came back and won. Next game was Norway. We were losing 1-0. We came back and won. Next game was Romania. We were winning that whole game. And the next game was West Germany, and we were losing 2-0 and came back and won 4-2. Mm-hmm. So our goal was achieved. We got to the medal round.
And so now you're facing the Soviet Union, a team who only a week prior had throbbed you guys 10-3. before we get to the game itself, talk to me about, I guess, your headspace, the team's confidence, and what Herb said to you after that game and leading into this one.
After the game in Madison Square Garden, we lost. Yeah. He didn't say much to us except to get on the bus. We'll go to Lake Placid. We'll get ready for the Olympic Games. But he also told us that for 2 periods, we played even with them. The first period, we stood around and watched. So we learned a great lesson about if we had played all 3 periods with the same intensity, maybe the outcome would have been, maybe we would have lost, but maybe not 10-3.
Right.
And that was the last time we ever talked about the Soviet game. And now the Olympic Games, we're playing them because we finished second in our bracket because Sweden had a better goals for and goals against. So 1 plays 2.
Right.
So we played the Soviets. We're in the medal round. That was our goal, get to the medal round. And this is an opportunity of a lifetime.
So interestingly enough, to go back to that game at Madison Square Garden, it's a real whipping. You could see that as a negative, but it seemed like Herb took it and turned it into a positive by saying, hey, yes, you did get a whipping, but if you had just played the first third of the game the way you've played the last 2, it would have been very different.
Yeah, and I think that there was, it was a positive. He turned a negative into a positive. If you think negative things, probably nothing but negative thoughts will stay in your head. So,
right.
He wanted us to build off of something, and as small as it was, we built off of that mindset. And I think we went to Lake Placid with a different mindset. Plus, I think we were a totally different team when we got to Lake Placid than we were for that last game. The last game was a long, grinding 6-month season, and I think everybody was just really anxious to get to Lake Placid and get the Olympic Games going.
Yeah, got you. So you're in this game with the Russians, and they go up 1, as I guess everybody expected, and then you guys came back and tied it.
Yeah, they made it 1-0. We made it 1-1. They made it 2-1, and then Mark Johnson scored that unbelievable goal with 1 second left on the clock to end the period, tied 2-2. And we didn't play well in the first period, but it was only 2-2, and we were in the game. And again, the mindset was totally different. We were excited. It's 2-2, and we haven't played well.
So what advice do you have for the rest of us, mere mortals? When you are, I'm going to say, in the field of competition, you're trying to hit those sales numbers, like right in the middle of that sales period, and you're in the intensity of it, as you guys were, where you're playing the Russians, and they weren't willing to yield anything. How do you gather yourself? How do you, collect yourself and push forward?
Well, I just think it's confidence. You have confidence in yourself. Have confidence in the people that you work with or play with, your teammates, your coworkers. And that, again, everybody's got to push each other. There was never any negative talk in the locker room after the first period. We were excited. It was 2-2. So I think being positive, staying upbeat, I use the word all the time, believing, believe in yourself, believe in what you're doing, have faith in what you're doing, have confidence. And that's what we had. There was never any negative, communication. It was all positive.
Yeah.
Go out there and do your job, work hard.
So you guys are positive, and then in my mind, the Soviets made a surprising change when they took the goalkeeper out, the number 1 goalkeeper. It seemed as if, in my head, they took you guys for granted, perhaps, because they figured they could win with anyone. Well,
the goalie they put in was the same goalie that was in goal when they beat the NHL All-Stars 6-0. So, he's the second best goalie in the Soviet Union, so he's not bad.
He's no scrub.
Yeah, right. And the interesting thing was Tretiak let in 2 goals in the first period. The other goalie let in 2 goals in 2 periods. Maybe Tretiak was having an off night. We'll never know. We've seen athletes sometimes not perform at their best for whatever reason being. So
right.
To me, the story wasn't Mishkin in the goal. The story was they only scored 3 goals. If they scored 5, we lose.
It's a different story.
Yes. So I think for us as a team, the game went exactly the way we needed it to go.
So you guys eventually tied it up, and you're in the third period. And talk me through, how did that play build up that led to you scoring the winning goal?
Well, Buzzy Schneider was on the ice. He was the line in front of me. My line was up next. Buzzy shot the puck in the zone, came off the ice, so I was up. He's my winger. I jumped over the boards, and the puck went in the corner, and, John Harrington fought for it, tipped it over to Mark Pavlich, who deflected it over to me in front of just inside the blue line. And, it's amazing how many things can go through your head in a short period of time. But I had a defenseman in front of me, and I said to myself, if he comes at me, I'm going to pass it by him. Billy Baker and John Harrington were going to the net to my left. And I said, if he stays, I'm going to use him as a screen. He stayed, and I had the whole far side. And the only problem I had was I was going across my body, so I pulled the puck just a little. And instead of it going where I intended it to go, it went just a little more inside, but still found the inside of the net because the goalie, I don't think, really saw the shot because of the defenseman, and it went under his arm. And, I just thought it gave us the lead. It's 4-3. There's 10 minutes left to go. It's probably the longest 10 minutes of our lives. But, I just felt that I had an opportunity to help, and I was able to do something with it.
So it goes in, though, and at least you have the lead. How did that feel? What was that moment like for you?
I was excited, but still, you can't get too high. When something like that happens, you got to keep your cool, keep controlled, keep playing the way we were playing all year. Don't do anything crazy. Don't do anything stupid. Don't make a mistake. So it really didn't feel like anything other than we have the lead. And it wasn't until the game ended that I kind of thought about, wow, I had the winning goal.
All right, but, cool.
If I didn't score, maybe someone else would have. I guess I'm glad it was me. But
hey, it's very fitting. The captain led the way.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's ironic maybe, but I was just proud that when I had an opportunity to help my teammates, I did.
Yeah. No, as you alluded to earlier, and I didn't realize this until I watched the movie Miracle. I think most people think that the final game, the gold medal game, was that game against Russia. But you guys had to go play, was it Finland afterwards?
We had to play Finland on Sunday, and a lot of people didn't know this, that if we lost or tied, we could have come in fourth place and not even won a medal. So as great as the Soviet game was, we needed to win this one to win the whole thing.
And you're trailing during the break, aren't you?
Well, we were losing 2-1 going into the third period, the last 20 minutes of the biggest game any of us in our lives have ever played. And this was all, rolled up into 20 minutes of hockey.
But you pulled it out and you won the goal. Now, how do you go from achieving so greatly, but it's only, I want to say, halfway or partway to the big goal? How do you motivate yourself? How do you bring yourself back up to be able to get over the hump and achieve the great goal, final goal?
Well, I think, again, we didn't go there to just participate. We went there with the objective of winning the whole thing. And, now you're in an environment, you're in a position where you can win the whole thing. And again, that's where all 6 months of practice, 6 months of training, 6 months of being with your teammates, everybody pushing each other, striving to be the best. I've said many times, if we don't beat Finland and don't win the gold medal, I mean, the Soviet game's a nice victory, but it's not that big a victory.
It's nothing. Right, I agree.
Yeah, so we didn't go there with the hope of winning one game. We went there with the dream of winning the whole thing. So you can never take a back seat to that goal and what you're striving for. Just because you won one game, we didn't want to end. As a matter of fact, after we beat Finland, hell, some of us would like to have played another game just to play together as a team again.
Indeed. So this was an amazing accomplishment, Mike. And I know that, yourself and perhaps the rest of your teammates weren't really looking at this through the political lens. It was a hockey game. But your accomplishment transcended the game, right? This was 1980 when all kind of things were happening politically, geopolitically. The Soviets were in Afghanistan. In fact, for the 80 Summer Games, the U.S. boycotted those Olympics in Moscow. Stuff was going on in Iran and so on. So I guess the national mood was taking a beating, and this win just kind of buoyed the nation?
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't know that until after the Olympic Games. To us, it was a hockey game.
Mm-hmm.
To a lot of people in the United States, it was more than a hockey game. And we realized it after, as a country, we were looking for something to feel good about. And it turned out to be us. And people were waving flags. People were proud to be Americans again. It was like we showed the world that this is why this country is a great country, because look what our hockey team did. And like I said, we never looked at it that way. But 39 years later, I still get letters from people who felt that game was a turning point of our country at a difficult time. We didn't solve the world's problems, but for a few weeks or a few months, we made a country proud again to wave a flag. And that's pretty special when you can think of a moment like that. But I also have said many times, that's what the Olympic Games are. Yeah. I live in Boston. I root for Boston teams. When Boston wins, I'm happy. People in Chicago aren't happy. People in LA don't care.
People in New York don't care either.
Right. New York doesn't care. Right. But when it's the Olympic Games, it's a nation that feels a part of it. And I think that's what made our moment so special for a lot of people. They took great pride in being an American.
You're right. Indeed. Really special moment for the team and for the nation as a whole. So talk to me. I know you're a motivational keynote speaker. You spend time sharing your experience and pearls of wisdom with at corporate events across the country, across the world. What's the premise? What's the basic message that you share?
Well, a lot of times, sometimes it might depend on the theme of a meeting. I spoke in a meeting last week. It was one team, one goal. That was us. One team with one goal, and our goal is to be the best. And I compare what our team did in 1980. I think the goals and objectives of our team are the same goals and objectives of people in business. And it's to be the best and to be successful. And I kind of tell the story of how we did it. I start almost like we talked about today, from the beginning to the end, to give people a better sense of what took place. And I do stress that it wasn't a miracle and it wasn't a fluke, and we weren't lucky. Corporations and teams are successful because they work hard. And that's the message basically that I have. And again, have some fun, tell the story, tell what it was like, do a Q&A with the audience. I'm actually in the process. I have a book coming out next February. We haven't got a title yet. We're working on the title. The book's almost finished. And it'll probably the book will be about my life, how I grew up in that house that I told you about, and the stories that led me to be on that team and to be the captain of that team. So I'm excited about the book, mainly because, and I'm not trying to digress here, but no. I never wanted to write a book until I talked to my wife, and I wanted my grandkids to know that their grandfather did more than just 2 weeks in Lake Placid. A lot of time people kid me and say, "Hey, you scored one goal. And I laugh and say it was a big one. But
it was a good one. It's a great one.
Yeah, I had a couple of others during the Olympics, but I want my grandkids to know that there was more to me than 2 weeks in Lake Placid. So I'm excited about that opportunity for the book.
Indeed. I think that's a story that the world needs to know as well. So Mike, if someone wants to, and we're looking forward to that book coming out, perhaps you can come back on the podcast here, Keep On Pushing, and share and tell us about your book. But if someone wants to find you to invite you to come speak for them, where do they find you?
I work at Boston University. I've been there in the athletic department for 25 years. My title is Director of Special Outreach. So I do a variety of things for the university. It's almost an ambassadorship role in some ways. Right. I meet with recruits. I meet with students. I meet with alumni. I meet with high-end donors. It's fun for me to be there. But you can also reach me at my email is my last name. It's Eruzione @bu.edu, like in dog. E is in Edward, D is in dog, U. So
folks, this is one of the great icons in sport. The guy who scored what turned out to be the winning game in the 1988, what is dubbed the Miracle on Ice against the Russians, and who's voted as the greatest sports highlights of all time. But more than that, just an amazing story about hard work, about teamwork, about vision, about believing in yourself, about leadership, all lessons that all of us, I think, need in our lives so that because we're all part of a team, so that we can contribute to our teams and to our companies, our nation and the whole. Mike, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for turning up and sharing with us, and keep on pushing.
Thank you, and I appreciate your story as well, my friend, and hopefully someday we'll get to have a pint of beer together.
Yes, I would absolutely love that. Indeed.
All right, then, take care.